Some of us have lost our dimensional force. And I'm going to explain that to you so that you understand the power of a creator, not the creator. The power of a creator. When you understand the power of your ability to create, you become more careful about what you create, but you still create. Now, whether we like it or not, agree with it or not, we're creating. I honestly don't think anyone would argue with that. When you open your mouth, when you think a thought and hold on to it, when you think a thought and hold on to it, in other words, you own it, and you allow it to be a part of your speaking and your actions. That's why it's important. By the way, you're going to get all kinds of thoughts. You're not condemned by your thoughts. You're condemned by your actions. So just that alone, release yourself just because you get thoughts. Your thoughts don't own you. You own your thoughts, but you don't have to play every thought card. Some you can just let sit in the closet. You know, one of my practices, and I think this is important because we're talking about creating. One of my thought practices is when I get a thought that does not line up with an action that I want to take, I literally ask myself, well, I ask myself a lot of things, but one of the things I ask myself without opening up my mouth, right inside that thought itself is that's, or I may say it's ridiculous, that doesn't make sense, or I'll ask myself something like, are you kidding me? No. But I immediately fight the thought with another thought, and in my estimation, that cancels that thought out anyway. Any thought that tries to get me to think evil or wickedly against God's system of operating or an individual human being. I was talking to someone, and this is a brilliant person, and as I was talking to someone, we were talking about someone else, and I immediately transferred it to the spirit of that person, not the person itself. Releasing the person. In other words, that person is struggling in an area, we want to cast that thing out. We get caught up in the persons, not recognizing that we all have spirits and thoughts that we're acting on that we shouldn't be acting on. All of us. And I refuse to act on thoughts that is going to move me as a creator against another human being. But they do have spirits. We do have spirits that we cannot come into agreement with sometimes. And we just have to walk away from those situations. Or if we have agency, we can speak to the human being. But in most cases, we don't have agency unless they ask for your opinion. It's the way I deal with the thoughts. Don't get lost on me. Let's get back to the dimensional force of those thoughts. So we have lost our dimensional force. This is the reason why people who are not of our trained thinking as creators representing God, are more savvy than us. They do have dimensional thought. So let me change the word dimensional to a word I think is more palatable when I talk to people, and that's the thought of legacy. When you take your thoughts off of yourself and think about your legacy, not your family legacy, your legacy as it pertains to your effectiveness on this earth. How will you be remembered? Can you be remembered to 3, 4, 5 generations? I do not remember if I ever knew my great great grandfather or great great grandmother. Very little legacy. Now, it doesn't mean that they were good people or bad people. I really don't know. So the issue is not being good or bad. It's being able to create dimensions in mind, with legacy in mind, planting seed with legacy in mind, beyond 1 or 2 generations, but 3 and 4 generations. So there's the depth of your actions and decision-making processes. Action and decision-making processes. Can you think in a way that will leave a legacy for 4 generations? Do you know how to make decisions that will last beyond you, your children, and your grandchildren? Do you know how to? Are you doing it on purpose? Is it a part of your plan of action? I dare say it should be. It's not just a matter of you having a successful business or being known for whatever you do as a master teacher, but can you leave a legacy like John Henry Clark? Self-taught, devoured books, brilliant man, and didn't die wealthy. But legacy was amazing. How about Martin Luther King? To my knowledge, he didn't die with millions and millions in the bank. In fact, Loretta Scott King had favor, and her children had favor with other people because of the work of Dr. Martin Luther King. You know, a lot of you may know Benjamin Mays, who was one of Dr. King's teachers. Great legacy. Even someone like a Louis Farrakhan, like him, leave him, love him. I personally like him. Legacy. Elijah Muhammad, like him, leave him, love him. I don't know enough about him, even though I grew up with Elijah Muhammad in the streets of Chicago, and Louis Farrakhan. Say what you want about him. Shaka Zulu. Who doesn't know about Zulu Nation? Can you leave a legacy? George Washington. Um, Even Christopher Columbus, even though there were so many that came before Christopher Columbus, there's literally a book called that came before Christopher Columbus. Interesting book. The dimensional thinking creates something that is far beyond their surface desires. Surface desires of wanting to be seen, wanting to have things, but was more concerned about making impact. Impact that changed the community and the thought processes of larger groups of people on the surface, but had thoughts for the children of those large groups of people as well. When I think children, don't just think about their personal children, sons and daughters, but think about their spiritual children, sons and daughters. Like Jesus. He trained up 12 to train up 3,000, even though he trained up the 12 to train up to 3,000. And maybe some of you don't understand it or agree with it. But when in the upper room there was 3,000, there was more than 3,000. It was just 3,000 that there was just 3,000 that accepted the calling. More than 3,000, but 3,000 accepted. All stemming from the work of one. That's one dimension. That's that way. But going out into Judea, Samaria, and that area, that's another part of the dimension. So in other words, going beyond your comfort zone into different areas, that's another dimension. But then planting churches and feeding families, that's another dimension. It's another dimension. There is nothing in there trying to change the government system. There's nothing in there. Of the world system. There's nothing in there trying to change Caesar. Or the system. The taxation system at the time where, during the time of Jesus, where a lot of the people were living under crazy Roman rule. And although Paul was on his way to preach to them, he wasn't trying to change the government system. In fact, he had great understanding of the government system and used it to his advantage. Although he ended up being stoned and thrown in prison and that sort of thing, but he made it to his place, not trying to tear something down, but trying to maximize. Conversion has to be personal because it is a personal relationship with God. That is the dimensional force, is understanding that everyone has a choice and that it's not on any man or any woman to tell others what that choice is. So love is one of the greatest components of dimensional force. Not trying to force yourself on anyone, but getting them to see that the better choice is that of love, respect, and honor, and family. And allowing people to go out from that family to be effective in leading the next charge. Or a transformational charge that's happening on the same level. Some of the greatest organizations span out, and I don't use business. I don't want to use business terminology here, but they span out into different arenas. but it's still the same corporation because they're thinking dimensionally. Up, down, across. Just something to consider. Hey, listen, if these videos help you and challenge you, please consider supporting the broadcast at patreon.com/the broadcast with PCD. That's where I do these types of videos. And then I also do breakdowns of scripture, Christian scripture, the Bible, at patreon.com/passage breakdown. I'm going to do it anyway, but I want to offer you the opportunity to support my efforts there. I will be willing to offer you, wait a minute, how you do this? Yeah, there you go. I'll be willing to offer you, I think with Passage Breakdown, a free copy of the Christ Culture for one subscription. It's my book, kind of telling the story of when I was involved with ministry and how I saw it. Thank you so much, and I appreciate you spending a little bit of time with me.